As we continue to cover the aftermath to Donald Trump's threat of massive tariffs, let's take a look at market numbers. They're just about 15 minutes in. Here's where the dollar sits currently. And we're going to talk about this with Peter because it took a deep dive. But as we look at the markets as well, I think we can do that, or I can tell you anyway, that the TSX is down about 89 points, and the U.S. stocks not really reacting too strongly also, taking it all in stride. So those are the numbers. Let's bring our senior business correspondent, Peter Armstrong, into all of this, and we can go back and forth to those graphics. So let's talk dollar. First of all, this has been a big concern. Would it be totally devalued? And it's dangerously flirting with 70.
So, yeah, the Canadian dollar has been sort of at 71 cents, breaching into 70 cents here and there for quite a while now, on weakness in the Canadian economy and a bunch of other issues. Donald Trump puts out that post on social media last night announcing these tariffs, and it's a straight line down to 70.5 cents. And there was real concern. There has been real concern that the Canadian dollar would slip below. It's kind of that psychological barrier of 70 cents, $1.41 or so when you flip it the other way. Because remember, the dollar's, people feel like it's a proxy for the Canadian economy. When the dollar's up, we puff out our chests and say how well it's doing. When it's down, we think, oh my God, it's a disaster. So we're just watching it. I'm watching it on my phone, and it's holding fast. It has been trying to climb its way back up to 71% and then falling down. I think that's the story to watch today.
Okay, the dollar.
Because I think traders have been listening to you, Heather, and the guests that you've had on all morning that are saying, let's just wait and see how this plays out, right? Stocks have been on a 6-day winning streak. I think investors are saying, okay, well, this won't be good for business, but who knows how this is actually going to play out. We have the experience of the first Trump administration and trying to decipher and parse out how much of this is rhetoric, how much of this is bluster, how much of this is real. And I think the lesson we learned back then is that all of it is a negotiating point. And this is an opening gambit. It's an interesting one. Is this where we'll be when he takes office, Donald Trump takes office in 75 days? I think investors are saying, we don't know yet. And I think that's what these numbers in markets are telling us.
Be patient, as Flavio Volpe told me as well. And yet, the investors have to realize that if they actually did take effect at 25% across the board, I mean, that would roil the economy, wouldn't it?
It would. And remember, the tariffs we did see in the first administration roiled the markets and roiled the economy and caused problems. And those were on really limited parts of like industrial inputs. If we're actually talking about a 25% tariff across the board, that bites, and it bites fast. We have all these economic studies that have looked at this. A 10% tariff on Canadian goods going in the United States and Mexican goods going in the United States would increase the cost of living by $2,600 per typical American household. It would be like a $210 billion tax on day one of his presidency. You look at the stuff that Canadians send to the United States, 75% of our exports go to the United States. It's like $420 billion worth of stuff every year. A lot of it's oil, $131 billion of that is oil, but cars, car parts, machinery, grain, 21.8 megatons of grain is exported out of Canada every year. There's a lot of stuff here, and there's a lot of impact that's going to have. But again, how much of this is just an opening position? And the question that I think we're going to start having very soon is, how do you get an exemption? How did you get your exemption? How do I get my exemption? And what are the sort of tactics that whatever this Team Canada that Justin Trudeau is going to have to put back together, what are they going to be able to do in terms of earning and negotiating and giving some back to get those concessions?
I mean, do you see, as Candace Lang was just suggesting, counter tariffs in place quickly, or at least
the threat thereof, right? I mean, look, for the moment, Joe Biden's still president, so we're not going to see any counter tariffs soon. We will see a list of things that they will target. The Chinese are talking about the same thing. The Mexicans have been talking about the same things. But what we learned in the first administration was that the retaliatory punchback wasn't as effective as pointing to directly where American consumers, American American businesses, specifically American manufacturers, where they would be hurt by the imposition of tariffs on Canadian goods, right? If you look at the car parts industry, the average car crosses the border, what is it, like 8 or 9 times over the course of its production. If you look at, in the 2016-17 tariffs against steel and aluminum, the way the Canadian team sort of fought back against that was showing how it was driving up production of like nail manufacturers in the United States because they use our steel to make a lot of those materials.
But in key Republican districts in the United States.
And so it's interesting now he doesn't have to worry so much about re-election, but the people in Congress that will pass all of this do. And so there will be the push and pull of politics around all of this. There always is. The economics are fundamental. We know tariffs slow the economy. We know tariff is just a fancy word for a tax. That if I impose a tariff on your goods, it means the people that are buying your stuff will have to pay that tax. And in this case, it's American manufacturers, American businesses, American consumers that are going to have to pay this 25% levy on all the stuff coming in from Canada. And as we just showed, there's a lot of stuff coming in.